Let's talk.
Giles Brown.
Vive le chaos, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but who knows. My so-called tranquil family life in rural France. It's the hilarious misadventures of Ian Moore and his family as their search for serenity in rural France leads them on a journey of chaos, commotion, and sometimes comedy. It is the new book by Ian Moore, who describes himself as a comedian, mod, and professional grump, a man after my own heart. Delighted to say that live from La Belle France. Bonjour la classe. Ian, how are you?
Bonjour. I'm well, thank you. You?
Yeah, another day on the, as I always say, another day in Spain. It's better than Brixton. There you go.
Yes, I can. Well, Brixton has its merits, but
yes.
Sun and weather aren't one of them.
Yeah, I'm talking pre-gentrification Brixton when you get mugged on the way home just for the hate of it. You know what I mean? So you'd say you're somewhere in the Loire. I'm looking. I can see you. You're not holding a vin rouge, even though it's Monday. So tell me a little bit about where you are in the Loire and what prompted this sort of. Why would a mod move to rural France?
Right, we are dead centre of France, in the middle of the Loire Valley, surrounded by a chateau and vineyards and cheese and stuff like that. And the reason we made the move is just that we just thought, well, we could. There's a line I used to use on stage, which was that, the reason I moved to France was it was the closest place to London I could afford to buy a house. Which is not, it is a joke, but in essence, it's exactly why we did it. The house prices over here are ridiculously cheap compared to, Brixton. We lived in Vauxhall, South London, before we moved to Crawley in Sussex. And you just, for what you can get for your money over there and what you can get for your money over here, it meant that I didn't have to gig every night paying a mortgage in a town I didn't want to be in. It made sense, it was a no-brainer.
Why France? Because, Vauxhall to France is that, last time I looked, there wasn't a direct tube link.
They're extending the Victoria line, apparently. It's currently being worked on. Yes, exactly. It's the night bus service is weak, I have to say. The reason is my wife's half French, so we'd been coming here for a number of years on holiday, and I'd been banging on at my wife for years saying, look, why are we going home again? Why are we going back to Crawley or South London, wherever we were at the time? And eventually I wore her down. I went off, we were here on holiday, and I went off for a weekend to do a load of gigs in Birmingham. So I was away from Thursday to Sunday. By the time I got back on Sunday evening, she'd found a couple of places to look at on a Monday morning. The second one we looked at, we really liked. By lunchtime, we'd put an offer down, and by mid-afternoon, we'd signed a contract. So it was all just a whirlwind. But if we'd thought about it, we might have gone, all right, let's take a step back. Let's not rush into this. But we didn't. We rushed into it. And no real regrets.
As you're saying, you're doing gigs all around the UK, stand up, the whole thing. Had you sort of decided that you wanted to step away from doing getting caught up in that loop of constantly gigging, and you wanted some time because otherwise okay. It
just to me, I was in terms of crow flying, I wasn't that much further away from comedians living in Newcastle and coming down to London to gig. So in my head, it wasn't a problem. But when I took my agent out for lunch and told him what I was doing, he looked at me like, do you know, he reminded me of The Sixth Sense. He had that look on his face that I see dead people. And, so I didn't necessarily decide to take a step back, but it was in terms of career, I was never going to make it to the very top because of where I lived. But that was a decision, I don't regret. I think I probably regretted it a little bit at the time, but it's not something I regret now.
Is it one of those things where you just sort of like, as all those self-help books, and trust me, I've got piles of them gathering dust in the corner of the library, but, it's like, feel the fear and do it anyway. Did you think, well, the wife is French. Did you speak a bit of French before you went over there? Or was it?
No.
Right. Okay. So instead of I see dead people, you suddenly saw French people. How was that as a culture shock?
Yeah. Well, it was a massive culture shock because I kind of rather than try and initially embrace it and think, well, I have to fit in here. I have to be like them. Otherwise they're not going to take me. They're not going to accept me. They accepted my wife, Natalie, and they've always accepted the kids because they are French, essentially, the rest of my family. So that was never, we've got 3 sons and 2 were born here. But I had a choice to make. I could either try and be really French or just be me. And it's very clear, you're looking at me, that I'm not going to get away with being French. So I hyped up the mod side of things, and I would turn up at the boulangerie wearing, like a ridiculous Edwardian frock coat and stuff like that. And I was known locally as Monsieur So British. And they took me, kind of eccentric, obviously, but I mean, they loved it. And we've got really good friends here now.
Here's the thing, because about 20 years ago, and we're probably about the same age, but there was that horrendous sort of move of people read the book A Year in Provence and flocked out to. I remember Peter Mayle writing in his 13th book about it, saying his problem now was there were loads of English people living down there, and they were camped outside his gate and saying, "Can we come and have a bit of cheese with you?" And he was like, "Go forth, because I'm trying to enjoy my life." But you've chosen a different part of the world, and one that isn't sort of. I suppose you're quite a rare roast beef, as it were, over there.
I am rare roast beef. Here, the reason why we chose here was just that my wife had family here, and we knew the area very well. I mean, when we first moved here, my wife's grandparents lived in the little village down the road, and she had uncles and aunts around here, so we already had roots in the area. So we never even bothered looking anywhere else. This is just where we wanted to be. And I remember when I first came here in the summer of 1990, and I just sat in the garden of one of Natalie's uncle's houses nearby, and I just sat there, and I was only 19, and I just said, do you know what? All I want to do is retire here and write light, undemanding comic novels. And it's taken a while, but I got there in the end. There was never a thought about moving anywhere else.
You're it's quite rural where you are, I would imagine, being Loire. So
very
right. So from Vauxhall, last time I looked, the only bit of green was that bit in front of that pub, which we can't talk about, near the Oval, and the Oval itself. So therefore, how do you acclimatise to the lack of noise and the smell?
It was really difficult at first. I found it really. I couldn't sleep because it was so quiet. I was lucky in a way in that I had, because I was away every weekend gigging in big cities and towns and whatnot, I had that kind of fix. So it was different. And honestly, it felt like going on holiday every time I came home on a Sunday evening. But I did find it hard to get used to it. The clean air. I found that quite tricky at first, and would wander around like I had emphysema just because the air was too clean and my lungs hadn't adjusted properly. But it's one of those things that over the years, I think I'm now because I've just come off a book tour and I've been away for nearly 3 weeks, and I've really missed the countryside. Really missed it. And so I think I'm done for life now. I can dip into big cities, but I do feel like a bit of a rube when I go there now.
The thing is that you start living in the countryside, and it's, if you're used to living in the city, then you get countryside, you kind of get this sort of home counties, petting zoo relationship. I mean, I live in the countryside, up in the hills in Andalusia in Spain. It's rough and ready, isn't it? I mean, cows, chickens, things spring comes and everything's doing things to each other, and whatever stays still long enough. It's quite a culture shock, isn't it?
It is, and there's one of the dogs now having his say. It is, and we've got lots of animals, and it's hard work. I mean, I didn't expect to be quiet, Scooby. For heaven's sakes, man. Do you know what? He's actually a rescue from Spain. So he's probably sensing the vibes.
He can probably smell me down the line. Exactly.
Well, we've got lots of animals because we bought somewhere that's far too big for us to cope with. We've got lots of animals, and they're a pain in the neck, frankly. But let's not beat about the bush here. we've got goats, right? And I don't like goats. I have a real problem with goats because their pupils are horizontal. So they always look like, it's the Wicker Man as far as I'm concerned. And we got the goats. Initially we got 2 goats because my oldest son did really well at school. And we said, you've done well, you earned a reward. What do you want at the end of the school year? Now, if we were still living in Vauxhall or Crawley, it would have been, I don't know, PlayStation trainers or whatever. He wanted goats, and which was a bit of a culture shock for all of us. So I know, it was just very weird. And then, so we got 2 goats, and then what happened was a few months later, I was away again at a weekend gigging, and I came back and I was absolutely worn out. So I thought, when I went into the garden with a glass of rosé on the Sunday night just to try and reacclimatise, I'm there and I'm looking in the field and I'm going, hang on, am I just so tired I'm seeing double now? But we seem to have got extra goats. And what had happened was that my wife she'd become a local soft touch for rescuing animals. She'd been flagged down driving into town by this bloke who just flagged her down and said, are you Madame Moore and all of that? And she said, yes. And he said, do you want this goat? Right. And it's a very rural France kind of mugging. Right. And, she said, no, we've got goats. And my husband really doesn't get on with the goats. So I'll pass up on this one. And, he said, oh, don't worry then. I'll eat this one.
Yeah.
which is a sales technique.
Yeah.
And she said, all right, put him in the boot. And that was it. So that's how we kind of collected rescue animals along the years. So the place is a complete menagerie now.
Do we talk about the coq sportif as well? Because apparently poultry is another feature of your, of France's national bird, the cockerel, etc., flying high, and you seem to have gathered lots of scratchy things that wake up at ungodly hours in the morning.
It's we haven't got a cockerel. I haven't gone that far. I'm not breeding. I'm really not into that.
Anyway, that's amazing.
No. Well, it's a sore topic that. But yes, we've had loads of hens over the years. They just don't seem to last very long. I don't know whether it's me. And my inability to look after hens, but we had this. So I used to name all the hens after songs by the Kinks. So we had Victoria and Lola and Maggie and any girls' names that were in the Kinks, and that seemed to be the kiss of death, quite frankly. So the 2 we've got now, French and Saunders, they've been going for years, and no connection with French and Saunders. They're still laying. So that's a wonderful thing.
Now, lots of people head off into the countryside and go, you know what, now I'm going to sit there with my glass of rosé and I'm going to write the novel. And all they do is they deplete the European wine lake by about 17 metres and nothing happens. and then the quote I wrote about you said you started taking yourself a lot less seriously since you're not doing so much stand-up. So how did you put pen to paper, with the first one? And is this the second one, by the way? Is this the second one? Is this a difficult second novel?
Vive, it's very complicated. Vive Chaos is the memoir that is of my time in France. But I've written, I do 2 series of novels, both crime novels. One's a series of cozy crime novels that started with Death and Croissant, which is a bestseller. And then followed on with Death and Fromage, Death in the Chateau, and just came out last month, Death in the Jardin. And then I do a more serious crime series that started with The Man Who Didn't Burn. So what I'm trying to do is absolutely milk the area as much as I possibly can for any level of inspiration. And I just found it easy to write here, which is why initially I'd set, when I stopped doing as much stand-up, I set up a B&B, which was just horrendous because I just didn't want people around me.
People, yeah, I know. It's always, we're going to have a B&B. Oh, people.
And anybody who's listening to this who runs that kind of thing knows exactly what I'm talking about, which is what gave birth to the first book, Death and Croissant, because Death and Croissant is about an English bloke who runs a B&B in rural France. And what I did was, rather than actually murder the people who came to stay at my B&B, I wrote about how they might potentially expire. So that's where that came from. And it's just using the area and having the discipline, getting up in the morning because of all the animals and stuff, and having young kids. They're not so young now, but the discipline was get up early in the morning, right until lunchtime, have a heavy French lunch, and then a nap, and then the next day starts when it starts. You know, so it's the and I had no intention of writing a memoir. You mentioned Peter Mayle.
Yeah,
I was specifically said there is absolutely no way I'm going to be that bloke. I am not going to go out there and write. This is how we do it, kind of French book. But after a while, you know, I got to the point where I thought, no, this is so crazy where we are. This is so chaotic that I just thought it really is time to hawk my family in front of the reading public for money. Well, because it was just crazy. It was just horses and dogs and cats and hens and goats and, you know, lizards' tails at one point because this is how crazy the family got in as far as adopting animals. That one of the cats had attacked a lizard and taken the lizard's tail away from the lizard's body. But the lizard's tail is like a headless chicken. It keeps going. And this thing was flapping about for 15 minutes, really quite angry. It was like the Black Knight in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And one of my sons just took my hand and went, "Oh, Daddy, can we keep it?" And that's just how nuts the whole thing became. And I thought, well, this has got to be written down. This isn't all Peter Mayle stuff. This is chaos.
Because the other thing is, I mean, when Chris Stewart wrote Driving Over Lemons about living in Andalusia, suddenly all these memoirs came out, and I've got a house rule. Anything that mentions Paco and his donkey, bin it immediately, because it's sort of identikit, you know. So I suppose that's the thing you guys do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I got publishers initially turned me down for Vive le Chaos when it first came out. Before it first came out, because they said, well, this isn't the story we want to tell. We want to tell the story of this idyllic kind of sun-bleached, you know, and everything's wonderful and this is the dream life and it works. And I said, well, that's not reality. You know, what I'm doing is not that, like you say, identikit memoir thing. This is how it actually is. If you don't do it right, and if you're the kind of pernickety so-and-so like I am, that you start ruining your own paradise with your pettiness. So I just thought it was more realistic than a lot of what was out there.
What's it like going on a book tour then and hawking it around sort of the home counties and stuff? And people saying, you know, I've got a little place in Provence.
Yeah, well, it's I find it quite fun. I mean, obviously, you know, for the years I've been doing stand-up, I can stand up in front of an audience, and that doesn't faze me at all. So I actually find it quite easy and very enjoyable. And a lot of people, you know, you are, in a sense, living a lot of people's dreams. So it's quite fun to do it in a way where, do you know what, it's not as easy as you think. And people then come away feeling, rather than feeling like they've missed out in life, they think, oh, maybe I dodged a bullet. So there's different ways of doing it, but I do enjoy the book tours, and I do enjoy meeting readers, especially if you write like I do, like memoir and then cozy crime and then serious crime. You're meeting such a range of people that you've introduced the area to that it's a lot of fun to do.
Can you kind of tell what type they are, what they're reading by the look when they come in? So you've got, oh yeah, okay, that one's okay. He's reading the memoir. That lady over there, she's reading the cozy thing. She's got on a knitted sweater, but it's the emo at the back, you know, with the goat t-shirt.
You can. The ones who read the serious crime novels, they tend to be paler. They don't go out much, and they sit in the dark with serious crime books, frightening themselves.
I've got to ask you this question. As a self-proclaimed mod, and more power to you, what's it like living in the country of loafers and Johnny Hallyday? Because the French have given us many things, haven't they? But, you know, you remember when we used to go on exchange trips and it was all loafers and hair gel? I mean, they haven't really progressed, and apologies to my French listeners, but, you know, the French music scene hasn't gone that far since Serge Gainsbourg. A Plastic Bertrand is Belgian, and you have Johnny Hallyday.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose you're right. I mean, have mods moved on? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I don't think mods have moved on either. I think you could probably, maybe why I get on with France so well is that I'm stuck in the past as well. So that probably matches it. You know, I mean, I haven't got much gone beyond. I think the last new music I bought was probably Pulp. So I don't think I'm one to claim that I'm on the cutting edge of youth culture.
To call you a refrain, what do you hope that people take from your journey?
Laughs. You know what? I just want people. There's so much heavy stuff going on at the moment, and the point of the memoir and the point certainly of the cozy crimes that I write are just to put a smile on people's face. I'll tell you one of the proudest things of my career, of doing all the things I've ever done, but when Death and Croissant came out, and that was chosen by the Samaritans to be their book of the month because it actually cheered people up. And that is something that I am so proud of because that was the intention, you know.
What does the Loire mod do on a Monday? By the way, what's your day apart from speaking?
I've got to go and do some shopping.
Yeah,
I've got to put on a two-tone tonic suit and go and peacock down the supermarket. That's what I'm doing. If
people want to find out more about you or about the books or about, I don't know, Death in Baguettes, perhaps the next one, where do they go, Ian? What's the best place to find you?
My website is ianmoore.info, so that everything is on there, and I'm on all the socials as Ian Moore author, and
you'll be able to download. You'll be able to order the book as well from our own virtual bookstore. By the way, the Moore is with an E on the end. That's correct.
Yep, MOORE, as in Roger.
And are you getting carried away with Olympic fever over there at the moment?
We are, the whole family. I just sat around the television in the house watching Tom Daley, and I'm some kind of traitor for leaving Tom Daley without my support.
Wow, there are worse things. This book is called Vive le Chaos, or however you pronounce it. It's by Ian Moore. Ian, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you this morning.
Thank you very much.